This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered and independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. First, thank you to our sponsors, Repay, DataSelf, and Velixo. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention two more things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, I'm always looking for victims, guests, on the podcast. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn about being a guest on the podcast. Second, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out the instructions at augforums.com/Rolodex to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, and this is episode number 58, Integration Platform as a Service, or iPaaS, with Jordan Fladell from Seligo. Jordan, thanks for joining, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate you having me on today. I'm looking forward to talking to the audience about integration, or the demystifying the iPaaS platform for those who are listening in. My background, I'm sure we'll dive into, but I'm one of our executives here at Seligo, mainly been focused initially on the alliance and channel world, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about the partnerships from that focus as well.
Excellent. Now, before we go down the iPaaS wormhole, Seligo, etc., maybe we could get your background. Like we can go all the way back to college. What was your first job out of college? How did you get into software? Give us the overview of your career journey so far.
Well, surely I had the direct path into software, though. Just kidding for you. I graduated from the University of Maryland, a proud Terrapin, and graduated from college and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and immediately got into the sports business. Started working in ice hockey, minor league ice hockey. Spent some time on the agent side, and that's really where the world started to turn for me. About the mid '90s, that's how old I am. I was in the agent space and wasn't really excited about the ability to continue to chase athletes, and as I like to call it, be a professional babysitter, and decided to take a chance and join a technical training institute to learn about websites, because they wanted to start a website design division and needed someone crazy enough to come in and start to figure out how to sell and service and build websites. And so by accident, got introduced to the partner of the company, started with them in 1995. And about 6 months later, realized the internet was the future, and opened up my first web design company later that year, a company called Web World. Wound up selling that in about 1998, 97. Sold that and very quickly transitioned my way out of that company, opened an interactive agency called Definition 6, where I got exposed to applications built on the internet. So first things we called the application service providers, databases running on the internet, old technologies like Cold Fusion and crazy other stuff that we were using to make databases talk to offline and online. And then got lucky from there, went to join a turnaround team at a company called Interland, now known as web.com. So got exposed to hosting and really what the first exposure to the SaaS world was all about, right? Because we were hosting applications in a multi-tenant fashion and delivering them to customers. And I didn't really know what SaaS was, but I knew we were doing that. And so I was really doing biz dev and strategy there and tech. And then from there, when we finished the turnaround, joined a great consulting firm called Seligo Consulting, where I helped them in Atlanta build out their technology business. So basically to help grow the business from zero to what it is today. And along that journey, got a great opportunity at Slalom to create a new company, and a company became known as M-Level, which was in the learning and development space. We built a learning platform to help measure learning in a different way, basically a data-driven way, using heavy gamification early on, and built the product. I wound up becoming CEO of the company in 2016, and recently exited that company in 2020 and joined Seligo here in March of 2020.
Wow, that's quite a whirlwind. So you're like techie executive type person, not the coder, but familiar with the technology and connecting people, bringing things to market, that kind of stuff, huh?
Yeah, well, my CTO, if my CTO from M level was so funny, said I'm dangerously wild in the area of technology. I understand how it operates. I have a lot of opinions on how it should be done, but you generally don't want me near a keyboard because if I'm playing near the keyboard, it means I'm about to screw up what you built. Which kind of operates the same way like in my house. My wife doesn't really let me build anything except change light bulbs. So the same thing kind of happens when I go build projects there too. So maybe it's a building problem, maybe not just limited to technology.
I like that word dangerous. I think I'm similar. Dangerously detailed, but no, I'm not a developer or anything like
Right,
that.
right, exactly, right. Could solve the problem, see how to solve it. Just don't put me near the keyboard or it's going to take you a lot longer.
I'm curious then, before Seligo, so it sounds like you've been there a little over a year. Before Seligo, had you been involved with ERP systems at all, or is Seligo your first venture into the ERP space?
Really, my first venture into playing with ERPs became at Celigo. I mean, I'm obviously aware of what ERPs do. You know, doing large scale consulting with Slalom, I was exposed to a bunch of different ways we were integrating into ERPs, getting data out of ERPs, but really wasn't focused on the ERP space itself, right? I was just kind of using it as a means to an end to help achieve a customer's objective. So really, when I joined Seligo, it was the first real opportunity to dive deep into the ERP community.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent background. So let's talk iPaaS.
Okay.
iPaaS, IPaaS, integration platform as a service with a small I and two small A's, if I wrote it down right.
You did.
What is that? Give us the overview.
Yeah, so I mean, really what the integration as a platform as a service means is a cloud-based platform to allow you to essentially integrate applications without having to put the software on site, right? So it's similar to the SaaS model for using like CRM, right? If you use CRM in the cloud, you put your data in the cloud and you populate it in the cloud, right? What integration platform as a service means is that instead of having to bring the integration platform into my environment, I can go to integrate one application to another via a cloud service, connect them, and not have to have that heavy infrastructure inside my building, right? It allows you to essentially subscribe to it versus having to maintain and own it internally. It allows you, just like the SaaS model, to not have to own that infrastructure and essentially have that subscription. And just like in a SaaS model, the benefit of using an iPaaS platform is the continuous development model that you get to take advantage of, right? Because as products advance, as more features become available, as the product evolves, you get those benefits without having to increase the payment for those benefits in most cases, right? The platform may go up in price, but you get full use of that platform to execute your delivery. And so essentially, you know, when you think about the iPaaS space, there's generation one iPaaS platforms, which are the legacy first versions of this, is have a kind of on-prem, off-prem model, some pure cloud, but even in that pure cloud, they're likely not architected and designed in a modern way. And I think if you know from your listeners are listening, there's the way we kind of look at the cloud and the services that are now available from the cloud providers like Amazon and AWS and Microsoft at Azure and even Google at GCP when they're trying to catch up for Salesforce at Force.com, they've really started to invest in what we call the ability to leverage their services, right, that they built on the platform to get scales and economy of scale in what you do. And so being a generation two iPaaS platform, we get the benefit of being that, and our customers get to participate in that.
So if I give like my attempt at a one sentence definition of iPaaS, I just call it middleware, using the old middleware language, middleware deployed in the cloud. Would that be like a good description of what you're calling iPaaS version 1? Or is there more to it than that?
No, I mean, first of all, let's be clear. I mean, we're in the middle of all the transactions that go on with it, no matter what. So we are a middleware, right? You don't go buy an iPaaS platform. You don't go buy it if you're not connecting applications within your world. You really have very little value, you know, for the platform itself if you don't have applications that you're integrating. So it's always a middleware, right? I'll quote, we have a great partnership with our friends at eBay, and they view it like the Alaskan pipeline, right? They don't even think about it as an iPaaS. They think about us as the pipeline that allows to move data between one system and another in a seamless way and cost effectively, right? So if I take away the middleware view of it, right, it's really about how do I automate. In our world, it's all about automation of business processes by moving data to make it more efficient, and doing that in the cloud versus having to install it on site in your office, and essentially leveraging that infrastructure to your advantage.
So we talk a minute about like legacy middleware.
Mhm.
Let's talk about what would someone have done 20 years ago? Let's say they have two different systems. Would that have involved a developer writing some kind of program that then has to run on some kind of machine? And it's listening, pulling, and pushing data. Is that for those who don't even know what middleware is? Is that a good way of
Yeah.
describing it?
I mean, it still exists today, right? There's a lot of companies out there that do integration, what I call point to point, right? They basically say, okay, this integration, this application may have an API, but it may not have an API, and I need to move data from one source to the other. And you can do that with custom code, right? You can write that maybe in a C sharp, maybe do it a webhook, right? And it kind of essentially make it communicate and then open the ports on both sides to transfer the data from one side to the other, right? So that model still exists. And it will always exist because some companies, at the end of the day, it's not a concern of theirs about using a platform, right? They want to go ahead and they'll invest in that integration, or they'll be convinced by a consultant that the custom view is ways to go because they need more flexibility. And there's lots of positives to that, and of course there's lots of negatives, right? Positive part is it's a one-time cost versus subscription cost. The negative is you're kind of limited in what you get for it, right? If you do a traditional integration that way, you're not going to get sophisticated error management. You're not going to take advantage of the artificial intelligence, learn to do better. You're not going to be able to add other systems to it to make it more seamless. You're not going to be able to use the same integration to connect your data warehouse. You got all types of limitations to that old model, which is why these integration platforms have kind of taken flight, is because companies have started to figure out that everything needs to talk to everything to create the ultimate customer experience of the most effective way to deliver orders, or all types of business process automation that's out there.
So you said error handling. I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad you brought that up. So, a lot of times someone thinks you're integrating systems is as simple as, hey, if I discover something a customer got entered in my CRM, I want you to push the customer into Acumatica. And
Yep.
great, that's all it is, right? But what happens if the customer name is too long for the field, for example? What does Seligo do there? How do you manage errors? Do I get a phone call or I get an email, or what happens?
Well, you're going to get an email that you're going to set up to the person who's responsible for administering that. Say, hey, you have an error. You need to come resolve it in your dashboard, right? Which is one of the benefits you're bringing up of being in an iPaaS platform versus being in a traditional legacy integration model, right? Unless you set up error tracking in all of your integrations, which most developers won't do, most consulting firms won't do, or they do it for you. This is automatically going to be part of the platform. When we see a failing record go through, we send all the records through that can go through, and then we stack those that can and give you the ability to go edit those in flight. And as soon as you edit them and fix the error, it pushes the rest of the transaction through. But it sends you an email saying, hey, Tim, knock, knock, we're here. You got an error, go figure it out. And we're going to give you about 72 hours to figure that out. And then we're going to flush the error right out the door, because we'll make sure also that we don't keep data stored in the cloud that doesn't need to be there for, myriad of security and other reasons.
That sounds interesting. Would you say that one feature right there is a big reason why people go with an iPaaS, or is that we just scratching the surface on all the reasons why?
Well, we are kind of scratching the surface. I mean, error manager is one of them. Flexibility for having one source of the truth for integration, right, is really important. And depending on the business itself, there's other drivers, right? The larger the company, the more IT resources have. The smaller the company, the less the IT resources they have. And so the smaller company you are, you're actually getting more value from your iPaaS investment than the bigger company, because you're going to have less, IT resources you have available to deal with integration. And integration is one of those things that's really powerful. But it's also a real drag on the company when it's not working, right? And you can see that, and if you can't find a developer who coded it, right, then just like everybody else, you can bring another developer. But I've always found, and I've been doing this, I'm pretty old, so a long time. Coders are like artists, right? Everybody thinks they can do a better way, and so I always tell people, when you do custom code, that you better make sure you've got that documented well and then very well scripted up. And that's the advantage of an iPaaS, is you don't have to have that kind of same level of scripting and documentation, because we kind of commercialize it for you and make it more consistent.
And it sounds like maybe there's two parts. One is the maintenance of it when it breaks 5 years later and you can't find the developer who wrote it originally. But then to me, the other part is the original creation of it. Would you say that with an iPaaS software like Seligo, you don't even have to be a developer? Are we talking about a business user could do this, or is it kind of a gray area between, depending on how complex the situation is?
So that's a great question, Tim. And I think, I'll answer this as honestly as I can. We built with an eye towards the business user with a technical background, right? The way I look at this is I have a sophomore at Georgia Tech, or she likes to call it a second year because apparently you can't be a sophomore. You have to be in your second year at Georgia Tech. And I think every kid that comes out of that school will be able to use Seligo, whether they're coding or not, like, because they've got the basic understanding of how to move data from one system to another because they are grown up digital and it's part of their curriculum. Now, if you have an old ancient man like me who's in his 50s, I'm probably going to struggle a little more than my daughter at using, our platform because I'm going to have to figure it out. Now, I'm a little more technically savvy, so I could probably get away with it, right? And so you could do the integration in a lot of our products without always just by mapping data fields. So I like to compare it to Microsoft Word, right? If you ever know the new Microsoft Word, or sorry, Office 365 Microsoft Word, or don't make Microsoft mad at me on this call. If you hit that little open button, or you go to the top, you can move like applications from one side to the other in that little window. I want to move save over here. I want to do this over that. You can do the same thing with data fields. I got my customer name over here. Where do I want it to go? So we'll take the object of that API and basically expose it and say, here's all the fields. Where do you want it to go in this API, right? So imagine you're doing a mapping exercise, and if it's really simple, right, you go one-to-one. The problem in any integration gets what companies do is they customize software. Familiar with this? Like they'll buy Salesforce and then they'll add like 16 custom fields.
Sure, well, especially in the Acumatica world, we're very familiar with customization.
Right. So people customize stuff. Well, once you customize anything, that's when you lose the ability to quickly do integration, right? Because it's lefty out of the box, and nobody really buys anything. They buy it out of the box, and then they tweak it. The bigger they get, the more they tweak it, right? So that's where it gets a little more like, okay, I could do it with having a basic business level skill, but I got to go a little more advanced if I've broken my own engine or customized my engine. Maybe it's a better way to say that.
So this is cool. And for those listening, the whole reason why I've got Jordan on the podcast is I was just curious to learn more about iPaaS. I mean, that was it. And I don't like having too many offline conversations anymore because I'm interested in too many things. So I figure, hey, well, I want to learn about this stuff and I'll record the conversation. So let's go into some details there. You mentioned like a drag and drop. So I assume you got some nice graphical user interface. Great. Like that. When I hear that though, I also think, well, that could be limiting as well. What if I am more technical and I have a more complex situation? Is there a level of coding that I could kind of open that door and get in there, or am I limited to the graphical user interface?
No, you're not limited to the graphical user interface. You can get under the hood, as we like to say. Write your own JavaScript, maybe create a webhook to go listen into something, maybe do some transformation or some logic in there. We have some customers who, when they do their e-commerce integrations, will have a logic run to basically, listen to the order, then script the order, then pull the variables out, update the inventory record, right? And all that mashing will occur inside under the hood, right? And so as much as I'm mapping the fields in an easy way, I'm still getting in there and playing with the logic of how those fields are how the data is being. So you can get complex, but from a product perspective, we really focus on the mid-market as a focus. So the complexity in that market we see is a little less than those at the enterprise space, right? Some companies in mid-market are super complex, but quite a few are in that mid-level complexity, which I think we have a real good sweet spot in.
So sticking with my customer name example, it sounds like I could write a little formula that looks at that one customer name field and looks for like a dash or something and splits it into two fields and that go into the other system. Correct. I have the ability to write that kind of logic.
Correct. Or look for something in it, like if it wasn't name or if it was an order, look for a certain color or palette, location. You could say, I want this particular order. If it came in and I see this geographic field to go to this mapping source, or, you can do those kind of imaginations inside the platform itself, but you'd have to know code there to do that versus have it just easily mapped from, what I'll call the WYSIWYG model of mapping.
And if I do throw code in there, am I still just throwing code in that one little area without losing the ability? I guess I'm thinking of it as like squares on a map or circles on a map. Do I still then get to see the map and how the squares are flowing into each other? I don't completely go off the rails and turn the whole thing into code as soon as I go more advanced. I'm just sort of confining the code into one of the boxes. And then the boxes still have the graphical relationships that I can see.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and you're going to always see the graphics first. We're always focused on the user experience, but to make it easy to quickly see what's going on, to see the errors, see the green lights, see where you're at a core level, what systems are mapping to what systems, and then very quickly see what fields are mapping to what fields, and then you drill down into the subsets of where you might have the code written that's doing specific functions in that.
Okay.
And even within
And
the error management, the code would highlight where the error is. You'd actually have a highlight of that section saying, "Hey, this is where your actual error is." Which actually helps you in that quick resolution against that.
okay. And so, because I like details here, maybe give us like a technical overview of the Seligo platform, starting with like, was this a retooled or rebranded legacy type product, or was this coded from scratch on cloud architecture, and how'd that come about?
Well, I mean, I'm not our CTO, so I don't want to get super far into the architectural depth of where it is. But we had a replatforming exercise in 2016. The company got its start, right? And for those who are in the Acumatica community, just give me a moment here. Got its start basically focused on helping NetSuite and NetSuite customers integrate integrate their core products, and mainly probably in the e-commerce space to start first. There's a lot of point-to-point integration. About 2016, the CEO and the CTO had a vision that the world of integration was about to explode, and the need to essentially build a next generation iPaaS platform, leveraging the original architecture, but bringing the power of the new user experience to it and making it easier for integration to happen was a super essential. So they basically did a replatforming exercise, right, and leveraged what I would call a modern cloud architecture. Right. And so that's how we get our efficiencies in cost. That's how we get our efficiency in data transfer. Right. There's a lot of companies, if you look for generation one iPaaS companies, they will charge you for data transfer. And that has very little to do with them wanting to charge you for data transfer. It has to do with that they're paying for data transfer. And because of a modern architecture, it's some of our little secret sauce that you can kind of take advantage of as a customer, is that we kind of bring that power to you. Right. We don't come around you and start saying, hey, you got to pay these extra additional, for being super successful, you got to pay more. Right. And a lot of legacy platforms will charge you more for being successful. Right. Because the more data you move, the more they charge you. And that's basically because they don't have a modern cloud architecture.
Interesting. And so you're not the CTO. So
no,
I'm
wild. Remember, wildly dangerous.
Dangerous. That's right. I'll ask you a few more dangerous questions. Give some dangerous answers.
Great. Perfect.
So
by the way, Tim, if I need a job after this and being too wildly dangerous, can I come co-host with you for business? Is that what that way?
Yeah, sounds great. It won't pay anything, awesome. But yeah, sure. Come on.
I'm used to these. Remember, I was in radio. I'm familiar with not getting paid.
So like, is this running on your own data center, or is it running on AWS, or do you know what the?
Yeah. So we run on AWS. We're an AWS partner.
Okay.
And again, wasn't here when the platform decision was made, but we run on AWS. We use their industry straight cloud to drive the business.
Okay, I like that. Just like Acumatica, also running on AWS. And you started with NetSuite, so it sounds like, well, maybe you didn't start, but you're saying that was kind of a big part of it, NetSuite in the beginning. So it sounds like ERP was kind of there from the beginning. Would you say that's a fair way to describe it? That you're kind of, ERP is maybe not the core, but it's a big factor in what you're integrating and why you're integrating.
So that's a great, so Tim, I'm going to call it a leading question, and I'm going to kind of answer it in this way. So if you think about, there's a lot of integration companies out there, right? iPaaS is an exploding space, and there's more and more people adopting that model. I would say when you look at Seligo, because we've grown up ERP, we understand the back-end business processes at a very detailed level. And so what we focus on from the platform is how do we do business process automation to help companies in the back office accelerate and automate what they do, right? That doesn't mean you can't, if you're a sales and marketing organization and you want to integrate data, you can't be part of it. But we think back office out. And so you'll see a lot of what we do, just recently we've released business process automations around payout reconciliation, business process automation around order to cash, business process automation around the data warehouse process, how to move data from one place to another, business process automation around hire to retire, right? We're always thinking about what are the back office business processes that companies look to automate to help them accelerate their growth. And put people in valuable places, right? Because if you think about it, there's really little value in someone rekeying an order into another system, right? If you're paying someone to do that and you can do that with technology, that person who's doing the rekeying can do something much more valuable for you than just rekeying. right? And the other thing that comes out of that, if you think about the great customer experience, you have to move data from one place to the other to ensure your customers are getting real-time updates related to what their issues are, right? And so where does that come from? The best source of the truth comes from the ERP generally, right? Especially around what the customer's life, what the customer history is, what they've ordered, where it is, all those statuses. It's just a great place for aggregation. And so that's really our expertise. And the thing we leverage as we continue to grow our partnership model as well as our domain expertise.
So what I'm picturing as you're describing what you call business process automation, tell me if this is correct, is that essentially you're using your own platform, but building some templates for certain business scenarios. And is it really just a template of existing stuff that I could build on my own, but you're just making it easier, giving me a better starting point?
Yeah, so that's a very good way of thinking about it, right? So think about these templates that have logic underneath of them that say, hey, we're thinking about, so I'll use data warehouse as an example. Like Snowflake, the reason why Snowflake's successful is they've kind of made the data warehouse process simple and easy. They built their own logic into their tool. So we're leveraging that logic in the template to help you in your data warehouse strategy. So by essentially not having to be a Snowflake expert, you come to our tool, let's say you want to take data from Acumatica using Snowflake and drop it into an Azure SQL instance, because that's your data warehouse, right? You don't have to know how to code to do that. We have the NetSuite object model exposed for you. So you're dragging customers, oh, I want to move it. And then we grab the Snowflake logics there. And then finally, we're dropping into the final logic, which is showing you how you want the data store to look on the Azure side, right? And these are just, accelerating your deployment process. So again, you don't need to go hire a custom developer. Does it help to have a person with development background? I mean, look, there's no argument on the planet that people who understand how data flows from one place to another are much better suited to use tools like ours than someone who's never been exposed to data, right? It's going to be, if you're technology phobic, you can probably do it, but you're going to be really scared of it. But if you're technology aware, I don't want to use the word savvy, but technology comfortable, maybe that may be the right term, you're going to be able to use these templates or business process automations to accelerate it and almost get like 80% there if you don't have anything custom.
Second year Georgia Tech student territory.
Yeah, second year. That's exactly right. I tell my daughter all the time, like, I'm working at a company where, when you're done with your industrial engineering degree, we're going to be recruiting you, except you can't work for me because it's not healthy.
Industrial engineering. Actually, I'm glad you said that, because that is kind of an area that makes sense to me, because it's a business type of improvement, process improvement type of an area. You're not talking about a hardcore computer science major so much. You're talking about someone who actually knows the business side more,
right,
has some technical awareness. Was it savvy awareness? Can't remember the word you used, but yeah, aptitude. And now you can take that and automate a lot of that mundane stuff that no one wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this product was built for the next generation of people who are coming out of college, the kids that just came out, right? This is part of their curriculum, and they're going to come flying in, and it allows, one of the great stories I tell our partners, right, is, look, I'm like, I've run, and built professional services first, right? As you know, we covered my background, so I've been around the space all the time. And one of the things you think about when you're a consulting firm is you have these premier developers. They're super smart. They tackle the most complex things. But you struggle to get the person who comes out of college, right? Maybe 2 years, 1 year, 2 years out of college, to be productive and valuable to your client, right? Because your client looks up and sees a 24-year-old kid walk in the office and look like me, they're in their mid-50s, and go, what's this? No offense to every 24 out there year old that's smarter than I am. I'm sorry if I'm offending you. But the first thing we think when we see young people is, what can they do for me? What value are they going to add? So a tool like ours, right, gives them a very big value to that company, right? If they came in and say, look, this 24-year-old person is going to go ahead and map and do all your integrations. Now, as a consulting firm owner, I've onboarded successfully, got that person there. If I'm a company, I've got this great talent who's got this mind who's grown up in this process, and they can use a tool like ours right out of college and not, have to be data engineers or data scientists or power coders to do integration. That's super powerful to a lot of people, in the market.
I'm glad you brought up partners, and you're kind of bringing up the services / labor side of things. What about on the Seligo side? What if I come to you as a customer? I've got an integration that needs to get done. I know this is a challenge with partner organizations, especially on the ERP side, because here's the scenario. I'm an Acumatica customer, and I now got an integration need. I've been working with my VAR, my Acumatica VAR, for a couple of years, and my Acumatica VAR doesn't really do integration work. So I discovered Seligo and I'm like, hey, this looks like a good way to get off the ground faster than just doing it all from scratch. So let's go with Seligo, but maybe my VAR, doesn't really have, everyone's buried with Acumatica work right now. They don't really want to pick up another product. Can I go to Seligo and just have you do the services for me? Or is Seligo only a platform that you then got to find someone to do the legwork on it?
So we're partner centric. So we believe that we should be partner first, but we have a services team who can help you with the project as well, right? So in all these cases, we were kind of flexible. We're customer centric, right? So whatever the customer wants to do, we'll do for them. If the partner feels like they want to tackle the work, great. We'll help onboard them. We have a great university curriculum to help them get ramped up on how to do stuff. If the customer partner doesn't want to do it, we'll fill the gap for them with our own team. Right. So we've got both models available. And of course, obviously, because we think the products, because we know the product's super easy, we also offered the self-guided and just using it with advisory hours, right, to support it as well. So you've got lots of options in that model, right? Or you can call John Roskell directly and tell him to do it. And then obviously, from the Acumatica side, John will just jump on there real quickly and start coding. No, I'm just kidding. I know John's not going to start to code.
Well, he's got technical aptitude, but yeah, he's probably got other things that he might rather do.
Right. I'm well aware John's got technical. I know John's, I guess now, I don't even know, like it feels like 20 years already. So I know he's not going to be in there coding. I just felt like I'd give him a shout out in the podcast, make him happy.
Yeah. One of those situations of, it's not a question of, can he do it? It's a question of, should he do it?
Right, exactly. Right. John, we know you're fully capable. We're not critiquing you. It's okay.
Well, that's good. So I mean, I like that because I've encountered that situation with other ISV products where it's like purely product or partner centric. And if my particular VAR doesn't do it, then it's a sticky situation. Do we involve another VAR on an Acumatica client? So it was good that you can fill that gap on the services side. And I like your point too, that, you could do that one integration to get me off the ground. And then you go into teacher mode where, you really want to show me how to use it. And now I've got something that's a core that I can learn off of. And, maybe I iterate from there for my other needs. So that I like that approach. So I want to ask you about a tool that I'm more familiar with and maybe do some comparisons here. So being a Microsoft person, I got started with Power BI many years ago, and they've turned Power BI now into what they call a whole Power Platform, including a tool that they used to call Flow that they now call Power Automate. They like to always add more syllables to things for some reason. So you've got this tool called Microsoft Power Automate that sounds like an iPaaS solution to me. And if you're familiar with it, maybe you could give us some pros and cons, some comparisons between Seligo and Microsoft Power Automate.
Well, first, let me be completely honest with you. For 25 years, this is my first time I've never been, build and running on a Microsoft platform. So I've been in the technology space forever. My last ISV I ran, we built it on Azure. We were one of the first multi-tenant Azure ISVs. We were the first people to adopt Power BI as a service and integrate it into our platform to do advanced analytics.
Wait, which one was that? What was the name of that one?
My company was called M Level. So we were
that was M Level. Okay.
That was M Level, right? And so we basically, early on, I've been, around Microsoft. I don't want to expose how old I am, but let's just say that, I've been around a while. I think my first trip to Redmond was like 96. And so I've been down, that path for a while, great relationships with many executives. Some are still there, some have passed, moved on to other places. Anyway, it's not my life story of Microsoft before you asked the question. So I'll be fully transparent. It's a great product, right? But Microsoft builds products to make it easy to integrate Microsoft products. So if you're completely Microsoft centric, the Power Automate, the Power Logic apps, all those things are going to be built to scale and built to work really well. It's also going to work really well in native Azure ISV solutions because those Azure ISV solutions are likely leveraging a lot of the component infrastructure that the Power Platform is, right? Where Microsoft tends to fall short, and they're trying to get better since Satya took over CEO. I mean, he's not opting like Steve Ballmer. Is what happens when I integrate third-party applications that we haven't pre-built, right? So now if I'm saying, look, I run whatever, I run Office, I run SharePoint, I've got maybe a SQL store somewhere, and I'm leveraging something else, but I have 16 other cloud apps. Like, that are running other things, right? Whether it's Bill.com, Shopify, it's a 3PL solution. I could be using Salesforce, right? I could be using Zendesk, right? I got all types of tools I could be using. This is the difference. Microsoft's built a lot of automation and power for integrating Microsoft applications. When you move one step further out, it gets a lot more complicated. And they don't think about that step of the journey yet, though. I'm sure they'll eventually get there, over time, that they'll get better at it. But that's really where the big difference is. If you're microcentric, it's a great tool. When you start to integrate other stuff outside of it, it gets a little more complicated, and it's developer friendly, right? So it's a tool that was built, Microsoft builds for developers because it's got the largest partner community, I think, on the planet. If not, it's like number 2, right? And they want to make sure the developers stay loyal and build Microsoft stuff. So it's a developer-driven tool. And for us, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're focused on the advanced business technical user, and we're focused on the whole entire ecosystem. So we're great at bridging the gap. Like we have lots of customers who use Microsoft products to integrate into other tools, right? So they may use Power BI, right? And they may have a BigQuery database or a MongoDB instead of having an Azure SQL DB. And they may use our tool to kind of deal with that integration management right there.
So your tool could even be like an ETL tool for a BI solution.
Yeah, if the T isn't transformation, right? And if it's transfer, right? If we focus on moving the data from one spot to the other, if you really want to transform your data, you can inside that little panel, but if you're doing powerful transformations, you really want to, you'd want to do that in a database itself. And that's actually what I tell people all the time is that, the act of a transformation tool in flight, you really have to think through that because, it can really be there's a lot of value in putting the data in one place and then doing the transformation of the data store itself, right? And moving it there and playing with the visualizations versus having to do the transformation in flight. First of all, it's faster, right? And second of all, it gives you a lot more power at the database level itself.
Yeah, I think another situation of it's not can you do it, it's a question of should you do it. You're primarily a transfer tool, not a manipulation tool, but you could.
Right.
You just might have to write some code to do it or something like that.
Right, exactly. But if you really wanted to fly and have all your data wind up someplace, I was just on a call with a client right now. I was like, I can't even get the data out of one system to the other. I don't really care about the transformation. I just want it to go. And I was like, okay, great. We'll open this endpoint to this endpoint and you'll have the data there. How fast can you, if you can sign this piece of paper faster, we can start the process of moving data. And he's like, that quickly? I'm like, well, here's the fields on one side, here's the fields on the other. We'll map them together and you'll hit green and they'll all go green. If there's any errors, we'll see the red and we'll go fix the errors and you'll be out the door. Right. And then you can have your data team go play in your data store and do whatever you want to do and, build the picture for the CEO and build a picture for the COO. And, obviously visualization and data to me is really where the key is. I mean, manipulating and playing with data is really fun, but it's how do I transform and send that data? And how do I visualize that data for the end user, which in most cases is executives who are too lazy to go do all the heavy lifting. They just want a nice picture. And ideally one that they can play with, like it's like a big drawing panel,
Yeah. How does it impact the business?
Right.
I mean, I don't care about the technical details. How at the end of the day is it going to prove my bottom line? What are you going to do for me? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like, I don't care how you I don't care how you made the sausage. I just wonder what can I learn from that process. Right. And that's why I think like a tool like ours is efficient. It's fast. It's great for that organization. But if you have a data science team, they're going to want, it's not going to work for them. Right. That's because, how else can I say it? But if I have a team of data scientists, they're probably going to want to do it their way and they're probably going to use really powerful tools. But if I don't have a team of data scientists and I got, a junior developer, I use Seligo to transfer that data over into my data store. And then I teach them how to use Power BI to create a series of visualizations. And boom, guess what? I got a data warehouse. I got a picture I can tell a story about, right? I don't need to go hire a bunch of data scientists and, have people smarter than me telling me how dumb I am. No, I'm just kidding.
I know when you get into data, there's so many different tools. And I think one thing, for those who are just ERP people listening to this, ERP is different in that ERP, your product tends to define your ecosystem. It's like if I'm Acumatica, I'm just swirling around the Acumatica ecosystem. If I'm NetSuite, I'm in the NetSuite ecosystem. And the ISVs like Seligo see this a little more because you cross these different ecosystems. But mostly with ERP people, it takes so long to build chops on a specific ERP product. You just stay in that ecosystem. Whereas data tools are a lot different. You go in on a data project and people just grab different tools depending on the situation. And, even to your point, you can pull together multiple different data tools. They're not exclusive or as exclusive as ERP products are, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, every if you're a database provider and you're a tool provider, you're going to have a lot of tools that work better in your environment because, again, I think we all figured this out a long time ago. I always look back at Apple, right? What was the success of the Mac? It's because they wrote their own software, they built their own hardware, and they ran it inside their own little worlds. They were able to build a world-class machine to run on just that operating system. And I think you've seen that like with the implement of Surface. Like the Surface device is just the best Microsoft laptop there is. I'm sorry to all the competitors out there because the team that builds the software now built the hardware, right? And the same thing exists in the data world. If I'm a database company and I'm a tool provider, I bet you my tools can work really well in my databases, right? And that's just the way nature works. And that's why companies like Seligo exist, is because we think about how to make, when those things aren't those homogeneous environments, because they don't exist really that much anymore, right? Especially the proliferation of cloud apps, right, or SaaS apps, right? The amount of point solutions, I just call them, we were growing up back in the day. You can literally get a cloud app to do anything for you, right? And there's literally like a specialized cloud app for almost everything out there, right? And so when you have these many cloud apps that your line of business is buying them without you having to have an IT buyer, right? So now think about that complexity, right? You have 7 departments, 7 different buyers, and now they have 7 different applications to do the same thing.
Yeah, you just illustrated the whole reason why the iPaaS market is expanding so
Right.
much, right? You're
Exactly
cobbling
right.
together all the best of breed systems and making them
Right.
talk to each other.
Right. And helping all these companies who have all these independent buyers go out and say, like, I've actually seen clients with 4 separate different types of CRM solutions.
Sure.
Well, have
Yeah,
that,
from
have that
acquisitions or whatever.
right,
Yeah,
right.
sure.
Or somebody said, I didn't like the one you bought, I'm going to go buy my own. And because it was my budget, I did it. And I didn't need to call my IT department because I just used my Okta single sign-on tool and boof, I had it, right?
Sure.
And now all of a sudden somebody looks up and says, I want all the data together. How do we make this all connect?
I think you made another point that I think speaks to the Power Automate differences, and I don't even remember the name of the Azure version of it, but I know there's 2 versions for Microsoft. One's Power Automate, which is like the end business user type tool, and then there's an Azure version of it that I can't remember the name, but they're 2 different tools is the point. So if you reach the limit of Power Automate, you've now got to flip to another tool, where it sounds like with Seligo, you are dealing with more of the single platform where I could throw code on there if I want to, or I could stay as the business user, but I don't have to flip products if I hit a wall in terms of, capabilities.
And one control panel, right? Or as one of our partners said the other day, you just gave me this great cockpit. I have all these different like dials in the cockpit that I can go look at, and I don't have to go anywhere else. Like I can go to one destination and see all of my integrations, see where they are, see what their status is. I got, all these things are right here in one place, one clean looking interface, right? And again, I don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out where I put stuff, right? So there's some benefits in that user experience, right? I think we've all seen the power of a great user experience, right? We know, the easier it is for someone to use, the more adoption you're going to get, the less fear they're going to have about it, right? And so the user experience is really important when you talk about maintenance, when you talk about long-term, management of those integrations, right? Because, let's say, Tim, you were the guy running the program and, you got a great new job working for XYZ company and they go hire some schmo like me to come in and replace you, right? And they say, look, now you're in charge of integrations. And instead of me having to go figure out and go, hey, who did all the work? I go back, we use Seligo, great. What does our panel look like? I can go look at all the integrations, figure out what it is. If I need to add, I can learn, right? It's all on one destination, right? So there's not only scalability there, the ability to add and grow, there's also the maintenance ability and the ability to know that there's easy transition between one and the other. And again, I go back to this concept that, a lot of people outsource work today, right? Especially in that, I wouldn't even say the mid-market anymore, it's all over the place, right? Everyone's outsourcing, right? So now I'm not even to go find my vendor. I got one destination. It's right here. It's right in my control panel, right? For lack of a better way of putting it.
How about pricing? So I know Power Automate is a per user pricing. I know you probably sell through partners, and we don't have to talk actual numbers. We can if you're able to, but is it per user? Is it, you mentioned it's not per transaction. What's the general pricing model?
It's just 2 variables, the amount of endpoints that you want to connect with your applications, right? So think about if I want to connect Acumatica to Salesforce, Shopify, and Zendesk. Those are 4 endpoints. Okay.
Okay.
So you'd have to buy a package that came with up to 4 endpoints. You could use those endpoints as many times as you wanted to in different integrations, right? So you could build different flows from one system to the other. and then how many flows. And what flows really mean, to demystify what a word flow sounds like, but it's pretty descriptive, is moving the data from one place to the other place. How many flows do I need? So for example, use a customer. Let's say I was just moving customer name. I don't know why you would just move customer name. It was one flow. And then the next flow you wanted to build was order, right? You can combine them all into one flow. It depends, but those are the two variables. And each package we sell comes with X number of flows, X number of endpoints. On the low end, we're talking about introductory pricing, about $7,000 a year. On the high end, could be completely customized, even higher than that, right? So we kind of create packages, and then you hit a point where it becomes completely custom. And so we try and think economically for our customers, but about $7,000 can get you integrated to about 3 applications, as long as it's not too advanced app integrations per year, right? So if you $7,000 is our entry floor price.
Okay. And it sounds like then I can pipe as much data as I want through that flow and through those endpoints once I'm licensed for them.
Correct. Yeah, we don't meter that other than what the data flow itself is coming. So
okay.
And you got to remember, in all integrations, you also have throughput has to be accepted on the other side, right? So we was on a call yesterday. It was Monday because it was Cyber Monday, and somebody had an ERP system that they didn't have the capacity to handle the speed of which the orders were showing up, and they were mad at us because they were like, "It's your fault." And I'm like, "Well, we've got the phone. Well, actually, if you could increase the concurrency of how many different orders we can send at you're on the other side, it'd be great. On your side, you have to give us more power to send you more flows, more data, right?" So even when you make the integration work, you do have to do testing, make sure you got enough concurrency, enough flows going in each direction, enough power. We'll use the simple terms like power to go back and forth, right? And it's pretty important.
I'm curious on that situation. So were they able to just, if they wanted to tone it down and slow it down, they could just batch things and kind of send them in chunks and overnight, for example, if the other system couldn't handle the flow that you were sending it?
Well, so it's interesting. What it wound up doing is it wound up slowing itself down. So with the backlog, they could see that they had like 300 orders in backlog. And what they really wanted to do was turn the dial up to move faster, which is what we wound up accomplishing in flight. Like we never turned it off. We just made some adjustments in flight while they were doing it, while we were on the phone with them. And literally, I think in about 15, 20 minutes of a call, they were able to adjust it back up. Now, they didn't get all the orders flying right back in because that's not how it all works. But eventually it all caught up and the speed kept coming through. And for the rest of Cyber Monday, they were flowing with no issues.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of the power of the tool. The developers are able to see it. They could see what was going on and say, hey, this is what the problem is. It's the other side pipe. We got to open up the other side of the pipe. And then once we did it, got it going.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep on.
No, go ahead. That's what I'm just saying. Like, it's a pretty cool thing when you can do that and quickly fix it and not have downtime, right? And that's the other thing we try and do is we try not to stop the flows that are working, and we try and make sure that we're always saving, and we're not trying to rush it through, right? If something fails, we'll send everything that worked through, and then we'll only stop the things that failed, right? Which is super important. So you get, integrations can be 0 to, 0 fail, everything fails, or nothing is all or nothing. And we're not in that model. We're going to give you as much as we can, as much as the system will allow, and then we'll store everything else that failed so you come back and fix it and reconcile it.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of custom built integrations, they go, if there's 300 orders, it goes through the first 180. If order 187 has an error, it just stops, right? Unless they built that extra logic in to skip it and move on, not just the error checking, but the ability to move on at all and then go find the errors. Yeah, that sounds like it's stuff that should, like you said, it should be built in, but it all comes down to budget, right? When you're paying someone by the hour to build those integrations, a lot of those corners are going to get cut, I would imagine. Well,
also the buyer doesn't know what to ask for, right? So if you're, think about it, like, let's just say you're not a super technically advanced person, but you know what you want to do, and the consultant comes in and tells you they got it, but you don't know better to ask about error management. You don't know better to ask what happens when it fails, because it doesn't even, your brain doesn't say, wow, I've been doing this my whole life. These things are going to fail. I have all this experience. You're like, I just want to automate everything. And especially think about like COVID, all the stores that had to change, COVID's like changed everything, made it digital overnight. Like those people didn't want to be digital. Like they were hoping they would never have to go digital. They were like the last holdouts. They were like sitting on that island somewhere, pretending the cloud wasn't coming, pretending the internet didn't exist, and all of a sudden, if they don't jump on cloud and internet, they don't have a business, right? And, they jumped in and somebody told them, I'll just code it for you. And then they failed, and they don't know what questions to ask. So they signed off and thought it was really expensive and complained at home later. And then it was done. And they said it's working, and it became great. And the next thing you knew, it was, all things came to an end. So,
I like your
sometimes
I like your COVID example. I like your Cyber Monday example even better, because there's a situation where integration can be working fine, and then all of a sudden, because of volume, that one day, that big spike, or you went viral on social media, whatever it is that drove that big spike, now you're in a situation where you don't have time to go find the developer or recode it. So that's a really cool situation where I assume they just call your support department, or I mean, how was that experience for that Cyber Monday customer getting from, oh, we have a problem, to, oh, we have a resolution?
Well, in this case, the SVP of e-commerce was a little bit hair on fire. Not only did she put a support ticket in, she called the rep who sold her the deal. She started escalating it to our CEO. She kind of went all over the place to get this done. Yeah, I get it. It's Cyber Monday, and her CEO was freaking out because in this case, the customer actually did some custom jewelry. So they had to make sure they had the inventory available to sell it. So, but normally it would just be a support ticket. She was actually fully engaged, and the team was working on it by the time she got to me. It was a great conversation. Lisa was awesome. I got to learn, which I always enjoy. Like sometimes customer support tickets are great because you get to talk to a customer. They're having a problem. I don't understand what it is, and I'm like, this is great. We have like a first world problem here. You have too many orders. Like why is your CEO mad you have too many orders? And she's like, I've been trying to tell him that. I'm like, well, do you want to put him on the phone? And he's like, no, you can't talk to him. Can you fix it first? I'm like, yeah, we'll fix it. Then can I talk to him? I'm like, because I want these first world problems, you guys.
And what's cool there is they spiked with your pricing, and in that situation, they spiked the orders and it didn't increase the cost. That's interesting.
Nope, didn't increase their cost at all. And in this case, we're going to help the customer think about in that case, we learned about not only about the pipe that was open, but we also learned about the logic that they've kind of built into it. So we need to take a step back, and we're actually have a call this Friday to talk about that logic that they want to deploy and see if there's a better way to redesign their flows, and also talk to them about how to take the next step, right? They're an evolving business, and with that growth, we're going to talk about how we bring in, they offer live chat, and I'm like, we should integrate into your live chat solution. So you're able to, have data relevant to the person dealing with live chat to support the customer. We should be talking about how we, integrate this into your data warehouse, like all the things that, an evolving business is growing, they don't think about, but when sometimes when there's a problem, there's always an opportunity to think about how we get better after we've learned from that experience.
Quick time check. We're up against the top of the hour. Do you have another 10, 15 minutes?
I only have to the top of the hour. I do.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm very popular. Apparently, I don't even know why.
No problem. I guess if you can, in a couple minutes, you mentioned artificial intelligence. Yep. Everyone likes to throw that term around. How does Seligo use that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're obviously using artificial intelligence to learn from integrations, to think about automation, think about how we can help recommend how to do integrations better, right? Using the AI as a learning tool, essentially through that journey, to help us understand what that looks like, and how we can make recommendations to improve your integration, make recommendations on how to improve, maybe suggestions in the future on how to maybe fix the error, like those type of things is where we use the AI to learn, right? For us, that's where we're focused at the moment, and I'm sure our CTO here would tell you there's 10,000 things in the roadmap I don't know about, and that's probably for safety reasons. As I mentioned, being wildly dangerous with technology, you don't want to arm somebody with more information than they need, because then they might use it in a way that you're not prepared to deliver on, right? So, we believe AI has a use inside the iPaaS world. We'll use it for basically making customers make integration easier, which is really our focus.
Well, that makes sense. It's something to help you learn from all the volume that's going through your platform. Right. It's not necessarily something to automatically fix things. You probably still need a human for that, but at least you're learning from and adapting from all the data that's flowing through your system.
Yep. That's the right way to look at it.
What about when you say you don't have to answer this, but can you give us a ballpark employee count for Seligo? How big you guys are?
Sure. We're 500 and growing. If you're listening to this podcast and you're looking to join a fast growing rocket ship, we'd love to have you take a look at our website. Got lots of current job openings, growing like crazy. This year alone, we've added 200 employees to our mix.
Wow.
And I expect next year probably will be similar, if not more. There's just endless opportunity in this, and somebody who's done this for a long time. Not only is it an endless opportunity, great space, great culture, great leadership, great CEO, and I'm not doing that just because I'm asking for a raise or anything like that. He's actually a great leader. He's got a great vision for where we're going, and a great team, and just a lot of great people that are here that are super focused on one mission, and that is to help customers make integration easy. and scalable. And that's, kind of what we wake up every day thinking about.
Sounds like a great way to wrap it up. Jordan, appreciate your time. I'll let you get to your next call, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure. And thank you for having me on again. I really appreciate the time.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of augforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.